And welcome to the Relationship Restaurant. We are Poppy and Jeff Spencer. So glad to have you with us. And we're all about heart healthy communication. And this is podcast 44. We have a great guest with us today that gets us into some topics that Poppy and I have been thinking about a lot here of late. So I'm going to let Poppy do the introduction.
All right. We're so happy to welcome Dr. Sheryl Ziegler, who has an amazing bio. I can't even get through it all. She is a nationally renowned. She is the author of the book, Mommy Burnout. She also would like to discuss parenting styles with us and how to deal with the stress that most of us feel as parents as we raise our kids today in this very complicated and diverse culture. On a national level, Dr. Ziegler has contributed to articles in the Washington Post, New York Times, NPR, Time. Her upcoming articles will be featured in Redbook, Yoga Journal, and Better Homes and Gardens. She is a regular contributor on CNN Headline News Network on topics relating to motherhood and parenting. She's been featured on the Today Show with Megyn Kelly, the Katie Couric Show, and the Jenny McCarthy Show. And then her book, as we said earlier, the award-winning book is Mommy Burnout, How to Reclaim Your Life and Raise Healthier Children in the Process. And also, Dr. Sheryl Ziegler is a regular contributor on NBC, Fox, and CW, both in the morning and afternoon, and has been interviewed on numerous radio shows and podcasts. She founded and teaches a mother-daughter class, sort of after my own heart, I have to say, called Start with the Talk, which she says is one of the most rewarding endeavors she has taken on. She's a mother of 3 children, a Girl Scout leader, and a Girls on the Run coach. So we welcome you, Sheryl.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
We are so excited to hear. So we have to know, we have like 30 minutes here with you. What do we want to dive into first?
Well, I think that one of the things that's been happening in the news lately, if you want to dive into something very current, is the anonymous teacher that wrote an article on We Are the Teachers, titling that lawnmower parents are the new helicopter parents. And that has gotten so much press. I've done multiple interviews on it. And I think it's an interesting thing to talk about. It's been interesting for me, at least in the last week, to talk about it from many different angles. And what's the truth to it? And what's the difference between lawnmower parents and helicopter parents? I'm happy to start there if you want.
Sure. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Explain I think we all know what helicopter parenting is, but yes, for our listeners, explain the lawnmower parenting.
Yeah. So there is, just to give that perspective, this isn't something that, necessarily psychology or research has come up with. Basically, a couple of weeks ago, a teacher wrote this article and said, move over helicopter parents, lawnmower parenting is here, and we're not having it. The way this anonymous teacher described it is moving away or getting rid of all obstacles in the way of a child's development, so they never have to experience any adversity or difficulty in their life. And I think that is really, really representative of the dominant parenting style, at least amongst middle class to upper middle class families in certain demographics. And helicopter parenting is hovering over your child, watching over their every move and being particularly cautious. And certainly that goes on as well. But lawnmower parenting, to their point, is like, now we're not just hovering, we're just plowing it all away. So that way kids don't have to experience failures. And that's really, it comes from a loving place. It also comes from a fearful place that your child will be behind if they don't have those advantages. But it really isn't good for kids. It isn't good for their development. And I think that's something I'd love to talk to you about, so parents can maybe be inspired to be comfortable with failures and adversities.
Right. Well, I know I'd like to ask that question because I know Poppy and I have seen this with so many of the kids today, especially millennials, have absolutely no coping skills. And so much of that is based, we believe, in this kind of concept of making things too easy for the kids. And the helicoptering turning into lawnmowers has taken this a whole step further. That's really frightening to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think one of the things that we're seeing that we hear about is we have focused a lot on the millennial generation, right? So millennials are entitled.
Sure.
Millennials can't do anything for themselves. Millennials have parents hanging out at college campuses, talking to their professors. Those are all, they're not just really sort of anecdotal one-off stories, that's really pretty legit.
Yes, right.
And so we're really, though, past millennials aren't kids anymore. Millennials are parents now. So now we're looking at the post-millennial generation. They have different names for them. Sometimes Generation Z.
Gen Z.
Yeah.
Right.
iGen, different. I just call them post-millennials for now. And so what we're seeing within this population, first of all, is continued decline in mental health functioning, increased rates of loneliness, depression, and anxiety. And, a recent report a few months ago came out from a very large insurance company that basically when they were doing their data analytics, that they saw the young generation, so about 19 to mid-20s, actually report greater levels of loneliness than even the geriatric population.
Really?
Wow.
Yes, which, normally we think of the elderly population as the most lonely. And so we're not talking about this always connected, 3,000 social media friends generation feeling the loneliest. So when we talk about lawnmowers, the other thing that I think of is instead of forcing your child, and I mean young child, so I'm talking 8 or 9 and up, to have their friends over, to go outside and play, to be involved, we're actually buying the story that them being on YouTube or playing video games with, headsets on and talking to people from anywhere. It could be from school, it could be around the world, but that's an acceptable way of socializing. And I think that kids have worn parents down with their insistence on this is how I hang out with friends, get with it. And parents feel worn down by it and maybe like, okay, maybe I do need to get with it, and are allowing that. And so we're really missing true human connection. And we're missing true experiences with other peers that will feel sad, that will feel disappointing, that you have to problem solve, that you have to kind of experience these lulls and these feelings. And then also, though, experience the high of getting yourself out of it, of working through it and getting to a better place. Like we're removing those opportunities from kids' lives in the spirit of thinking that we are helping our kids.
Right. Absolutely. As I came from Wisconsin before we moved to Southwest Florida, and I had a parenting certification. I used to go into schools and churches and help parents understand the challenges that they face, that their children face. And loneliness a decade or two ago was not on the radar then. They were much more concerned about getting involved with illegal substances and sexual promiscuity and AIDS. AIDS
Poppy and I were
big
talking
deal.
about this yesterday too. Going back to our childhoods, we didn't have the opportunity to essentially be sequestered, if you will, in a room playing these kind of things. We were all in a position where we were socializing. We were out with all the kids in the neighborhood. We were getting our knees scraped. We were getting in arguments. We were having best of relationships and working through those things. So, our generation had that opportunity, and we've now, I think, taken a lot of that away, is what you're saying.
Also, what we did when we had scraped knees or cuts or anything, and we were playing outside, you never went inside because then you'd have to stay in. So the socialization was still a great desire, as I believe it is today. So how do we get back to that, Sheryl? How do we get back to cultivating a need for socialization with our children?
Well, I could answer this question from multiple places, but for the last couple of years, I have really devoted all of my research to mothers and really understanding what's happening to mothers, because also we're seeing a mental health crisis within women with, increased rates of anxiety and depression. And I'd say a place to start is, number one, for parents in general, but particularly mothers, to view their own lives as worthy of socialization, as worthy of maintaining friendships, as not being the definition of a good mother, not being that you are all giving to your kids at the sacrifice of your own life, right? That's the first.
You relinquish it. So many people that we work with, they relinquish their own lives for their well-intended idea that they're helping their child.
Absolutely. And that's why the subtitle to Mommy Burnout is How to Reclaim Your Life and Raise Healthier Children in the Process, Right. And it is this reclamation of I am worthy. I deserve to go out with my girlfriends if I can once a week. I deserve to be able to have a phone call in which I'm not interrupted. I want to model and show my kids that relationships outside of them and outside of my role as a mother are very important to me emotionally, physically, and mentally. So I think that it starts from the top. And kids don't oftentimes see their parents socializing anymore.
Right.
They're so busy.
Because they're working.
Yeah, they're working on the weekdays, and then they're busy on the weekends running kids around to all sorts of club sports and school sports and violin and piano that they don't see anymore, that, the Smiths or the Joneses or whoever come over on the weekends and they have coffee together or dinner together. Like, yes, do parents do that? Of course, they do it sometimes. But it's not like for me in my childhood, I remember that being a very regular occurrence. We would get together.
So do we, Sheryl. So do we.
And families would get together quite often. And kids would go do whatever they're going to do and play. And the grown-ups would talk. Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
So what drives this increase in the mental health and well-being of mothers today? Is it guilt and shame? Is it a comparative analysis that they're looking around and they think that they should be better? What is driving this obsessive almost need and focus to be the perfect mom?
I think a lot of the social and societal messages in America, and I'll say in America because my research was mostly about American moms, but interestingly, when I did research
in France, they're awesome. These moms are awesome in France.
Well, there are,
right?
Well, it's interesting. There are certain countries where they are healthier, but depression is the number one global disability.
Yes.
So depression is not unique to Americans.
Sure.
And then I've gotten notes and feedback from women in the Middle East that say, I feel this way too.
Wow.
So that's been shocking to me and really eye-opening. And even when I look at some of the countries that are the first for the foreign rights of this book, they're Romania and Poland. They're just countries that I don't know what's going on with the moms there, but clearly I think something similar is going on or they wouldn't be interested. Sure. So I think that one of the things is just somehow we've gotten the message. Here's my answer, at the very least for American mothers. We had the unintended consequences of the equal rights movement being more beneficial for men than it actually has been for women. And one of the things that the equal rights movement said was, great, you have all of these opportunities. And because we know that the women before us have fought so hard for this, we feel this need and almost this guilt to say, well, I need to do it all. This is what my mother and my grandmother fought for, and I have to take advantage of this. But yet we're still biologically wired to, not every woman, but vast majority of women.
Nurture.
Yeah, to nurture, to procreate, to be maternal. And so the two, I just don't think we have figured out yet that the equal rights movement just gives us choices. They are not forced. You don't have to. It just gave you the choice to choose what educational institution you wanted to study at if you wanted to. Or if you want to be a CEO, great. But if not, you don't have to. It is a choice. It's an option. And so, we swung and we were just like, oh my gosh, now we have these opportunities. We have to take them. And really the research consistently has said women are much less happy than they were, let's say in the 1960s and 70s, than they are today. And in part it is because we are reporting higher levels of stress and we're trying to do more things that are, quite frankly, completely unrealistic.
Right. I totally agree. Your message is resonating with thousands of women and men out there too. I'm sure men, I kind of feel badly for them because they don't kind of know what hit them. It's like, but I don't understand because they grew up in those same households where typical or maybe stereotypical gender roles were in place.
Well, I'm laughing just thinking about some of the dynamics here where men once again are sitting there scratching their heads going, I don't get it. You got what you wanted, right? Isn't this what you all were dying for and asking for? And now you're upset that you have it. And I don't know what to say or what to do to help.
So they don't have in their brains, in their male brains, the fix-it solutions. I don't really think that men know
which
how
of course men always want to do, to try to say, I know how to fix these things. That's what we do. We fix things. And this is not a fixable scenario to say, okay, back off being such a caring, devoted, selfless mom and come back to me and kind of go back in time to more of the traditional roles.
No, and I don't think that anybody wants that today, traditional roles.
Well, I mean, being more, the things we were talking about before, doing more social aspects and being more socially active in the same kind of vein as our parents, what we saw before, and the kids can then witness that.
Okay, so what do you say, Sheryl?
So, well, chapter 6 of Mommy Burnout is totally devoted to marriages.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yes, and it's because there's a couple of things that you both said that there is some truth to all of it. I mean, I think that men have actually reaped the benefits because a majority of homes are dual working homes. So there's a little bit less pressure on men to be financially in charge.
Mm-hmm.
And men are exactly that. I mean, when you say that they're fixers, they're problem solvers, that is actually, I did the research on that when it came to men. They say that men are actually hardwired, and they generally that's their style.
Right.
So that's what happens in marriages. Women are under so much stress; they're coming home and they want to, process it and talk about it with their spouses. And then men are like, okay, let's just cut to the chase and let me just tell you what to do, which is really frustrating for women, right?
Right.
And then women.
Yes.
Women, there's a landmark UCLA study that came out that the authors of that talk about that women are actually hardwired to tend and befriend, to tend to their children and befriend other women when under stress. And when I saw that, I thought, yes, jackpot. This to me describes what is happening. That study was gender differences in how we handle stress. And
so repeat that one more time because that's really important.
Yeah. So women are wired to tend and befriend. And so that means tend to your children and befriend other women when under stress.
Okay.
Versus men are more hardwired for fight, flight, or freeze. I think that there's something really huge to that. So my antidote to all of this stress and what do you do and how do you help marriages and all of the things that need really a lot of improvements are exactly that, being available to tend to your children. So it's not, the word balance is really taboo because everyone's like, there's no such thing as balance. I think it's just a matter of just time management and looking at what your time sucks are. Social media right now takes up social media and online, and just being online, whether that's shopping online or just cruising articles online. There's studies that say it's anywhere from 18 to 30 hours a week the average woman spends online.
Oh, just women or men too, or just women?
A lot of the research, I mean, men do as well, but I'm solid on the research with women because what I'm interested in is saying, let's just be super conservative and say, okay, 18 hours a week, right? And I'm sure men are
right.
Men may be even a little bit higher, but women do a lot of shopping online.
Sure.
Let's just say men and women are probably all in that range, but let's just say a woman conservatively has 18 hours online. If she could even take half of those hours and put them back into her family or put them back into her own self-care, working out, eating well, whatever it is that she needs for her life, how much more her physical and mental health would improve. I think it would be dramatic.
Yes.
And everything's competing for our time now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
As I'm on this podcast with you, I could be looking at my text, responding to emails, and looking at voicemails. And I mean, it's not even multitasking.
We appreciate you not doing that.
Exactly. But I think that the average person these days has a really hard time focusing on one thing at a time. There's bells and whistles and dings and everything going off that are like dopamine hits that are saying, oh, but I need to check my phone right now. I need to look at my email right now. And so I think that's one of the things that's interesting to our time right now is just how much distraction there is.
I knew a gentleman who did a whole conversation about how we're all interrupt driven. Everything is interrupt driven. None of us can stay focused on anything because the next thing that interrupts us is probably, in our opinion, more important we need to go look at.
Absolutely. And there's a message to your kids when you're parenting, if you're talking to them and you've got a phone in your hand,
right,
or if you're at dinner and your phone's on the table, it just sends a message that whatever we're doing right now is good until the next interruption. And then, sorry, but that's more important. I want people to understand that from both a verbal and nonverbal way. It nonverbally communicates. There could be something more important coming and you'll have to wait.
Yes. And I think that's so, talking about distraction and the consumption with devices, and you probably know of Sherry Turkle.
I don't think I do.
She did a wonderful thing. I used to teach it in my psychology class. I show this TED Talk all the time, but how we're so disconnected although we're connected. And this is like 10 years ago. And she had case after case of these young girls and boys and getting together, and they had a birthday party and a sleepover, and everybody is just playing on their phones and they're texting each other right in the same room as they're sitting on the same couch. I think that's a common scenario that we have today.
Absolutely. And it's amazing if you say that was 10 years old, because that's exactly what's happening today.
We often say that we'll say, I'm talking to so-and-so, and they're not actually talking, they're texting. Now the word talking is taken over.
Yes, you're exactly right. You know, when I do sessions with kids, last night was my late night, so I'm laughing. They'll say, well then, and then we were talking, and then I said, wait, hold on. Do you literally mean talking or texting? And I do that all the time. They're like, oh, I mean texting.
Right.
or I mean, like they don't really mean talking. They don't talk.
Right. So what's our solution for the parents? I love the conservative, let's take 9 hours out of the day and then really cultivate that out of the week to cultivate those hours into something meaningful for either your well-being as a mom or your family's well-being, and to really focus those hours. We love that. Are there any other options out there for families that are under the stress of because there is that old saying, when mama's not happy, ain't nobody happy, right?
Nobody.
And so if we can treat the first person, the mom, maybe that will translate back into the family. What do you think?
Absolutely. I'm going to give you some of the top tips that I put on here really from Mommy Burnout.
Okay.
All of them are backed by research. All of them I've done with really thousands of clients, and they're really helpful. And there's something that everybody can start doing today. All of these tips are simple, basic things.
Love it.
Yes. The first thing I'll say, and it's always the very first thing I say, is you've got to get back to your friendships. You've got to put your oxygen mask on first before you're trying to revive kids, right? If you've got your oxygen mask on and flowing, you don't need to do any revival. So put your friendships first, get back, get connected with other women, realize that you're not alone. It is so good for your physical and mental health that it's my top tip. You've got to get connected, either again with old connections that you've let go, or you've got to create new ones. Because people will say, what if I don't have friends anymore? I say, well, then you got to create them. Because trust me, there are millions of women out there also looking for connection. My second tip is you got to get out of the social media trap. You've got to realize that everybody is showing their highlights. And the more time we and or our teenagers spend online, the increased rates of depression and anxiety and even in suicidal thoughts amongst teenagers go up. So the more we're exposing ourselves, we've got to limit it. And I'm not anti-social media, but you just got to limit it. Don't start your day off that way. Give yourself a very short amount of time. Go through, look through pictures, be done. Realize that everybody's pictures you're looking at are all their highlights, and you're not seeing the tantrums and the meltdowns and the marital fights and the financial problems that everybody around you is experiencing to some degree.
We just did a webinar, Sheryl, where we had pictures of a happy family, foursome, perfect, and then we had the contrast of that with the arguing, the kids are pouting, the parents are fighting, and unfortunately, I think the second image was the one that is a little bit more real than in what's going on today. And we talk about that. There's something on my Facebook page where we're not presenting the best foot forward, so to speak. And a good friend of mine has a candy factory business. And so when we were taking our kids through it, to see it, you always have to wear the hairnet and everything else. Well, I took a picture of moi with the hairnet on.
All of us.
It is so ghastly. But I put it on there because the message was, it's not about me. It's about, honoring my friend, my dear friend that I grew up with, and her business and
sharing it with our kids.
Yeah. And I left that picture up there. It's warning. It is not pretty.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and everybody loves and appreciates those kinds of things, right? You're all of a sudden more relatable. And maybe if everybody's just a little bit more real, you can find your people a lot easier. So I think it's really important to be real, not just as the consumer of social media, but also as the provider of it, whatever we're posting. And I've even felt that way. Sometimes I'm like, I think everything seems a little too rosy right now, so I need to get real. I have to be responsible in what I'm putting out into the world as well.
I recently had a couple of my friends, one from college, one from high school, both dropped dead of sudden heart attacks. And there was a lot of social media conversation sharing going on about that, because we felt that is the kind of things that we really need to be talking and sharing and connecting about with other friends that were also feeling this pain.
And grieving together.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We've just got to do that. You've got to realize that. I say to so many women when I go around and do talks, and I say, oh, when's the last time you talked to your best friend? And a lot of people are like, wow, it's been months or it's been years. Even this morning, my own best friend left me a voicemail at 5:30 this morning and said, I just haven't heard your voice in a while. Can you just give me a call back and let me hear your voice?
Aww.
Did
you call her yet? Have you called her yet?
I have not called her yet. I will.
All right.
I will today.
After we finish.
The minute we get off this, you have to call her.
You're right. I'm going to. I'm going to even tell her that. I'm going to tell her. But it's true, because I've only
What's her first name?
Kirsten.
Kirsten, you get a call within the next hour.
That's right. That is right.
All right. So what's our third thing that we can do to reclaim the reclamation of mom?
Yes. I think the third thing is, people laugh at this, but it's true. Don't expect your husband to be like your best girlfriend.
Yes.
I think it's so important that we value, of course, the relationship, the connection we have with our husbands, our spouses, our partners. However, there is nothing that's going to replace your girlfriend who will sit with you for hours and hear you listen, complain about what's going on. And they're just going to listen, and they're not going to try to solve your problems, and they're going to empathize. And what happens is, because we're lonelier than ever and we're so spread out across the country that we're oftentimes not with our best friends, we put all of that onto our spouses. And they can't fulfill that need. They fulfill other needs, but they can't fulfill that need for the most part.
And even when you express that to your spouse, I know that you almost have to censor and edit what you're saying so that they will receive it in the way that you intended, whereas a girlfriend automatically gets it.
Exactly.
Is that a fair statement?
Yes. And there's so much to say. I mean, there's also the piece of that oxytocin, our love hormone, is really flowing at some peak levels when you're with another woman who you feel connected with. And so even if you're a really good guy friend of yours, if you're out to lunch with him, they say your oxytocin is not flowing in the same way as it is when you're with a close girlfriend. And so it is literally physically good for us. It's mentally good for us. It helps loneliness. It extends our life spans. I mean, it's just unbelievable. So I know I already said that you need to connect with others, but I also want to preserve relationships and marriages. And so if you don't put that stress on to your spouse, and you're really clear about what their role is for you and yours is for them, and you kind of stay more within that, there's also a lot less tension.
Right.
Marriages could use that these days, anything that helps with the tension. So that would be another one of my tips.
And just a little add on to what you said about that. If you do, there's something that's very urgent in your mind as a female, and you do share it with your spouse, we always recommend, because of time and attention, to give your spouse an idea of how long this conversation will last. Like, I just need 15 minutes of your time, of your undivided attention. A guy is going to be so much more willing to listen and to be present in that. If it's something that's urgent that can be shared with either your husband or your best friend. I don't know. What do you think about that? That's what we do with our clients. That's what we advise.
Yeah, I completely agree. Women generally like to process and talk a lot, and we like to go through things from different angles, and
Sure.
So we know that in general, again, men have less tolerance for that. So if we can save those important conversations and we can mark them as, hey, right now, this is what I really need from you. I'm going to tell you about something really big going on for me, and this is what I want from you. And you're clear with that as well in your communication. I think that's really helpful.
Yep, right. I think that's great. All right. Is there a fourth thing on your list, or is it just the top 3 tips?
Well, we can.
And then they have to get the Mommy Burnout book.
Yeah, they do have to. You have to get the Mommy Burnout book if you're a mom, or if
You have to get the Mommy Burnout book.
It's really, honestly, I think it could be a game changer. I mean, it's the way I would just summarize this talk is to say, people have asked me, it's the title of chapter 10, are my kids burned out too? And kids are burning out. They're burning out from school and sports and friends, and even sometimes online. They're burning out because we're doing everything to these extreme degrees.
Yes.
And so I think if I can inspire a mom, sometimes they're going to look at a book like this and they're going to think, well, if this isn't a straight up parenting book, I can't, I'm not going to take the time because I just need to focus on my kids. I just say, like, take some time for yourself, because taking care of yourself inevitably improves your whole entire family's functioning. Truly. It's not just like a nice thing to say. It really makes a difference in your marriage and your whole entire family functioning and how everyone's getting along and communicating. So it's the best thing that you can do for your kids. And sometimes that is the only way I can inspire parents to actually take some time for themselves, is to say, well, and a side effect is that it will help your kids.
Cheryl, it reminds me of that old metaphor about the lumberjack who says, I'm just going to saw away and saw away. I'm just not making any progress. And the other guy says, well, if you took your saw out and stopped for a moment and sharpened it, you do a whole lot better.
Yep.
And lastly, one of the disturbing trends that we've noticed, just in observational, whenever we're out, we're always doing research, right, on human behavior.
Right.
And one of the things that we've noticed so often is that young children are starting to use language and communicate with their parents as a parent. They treat their parents like children. They're encouraging mom and dad to do something, they're just sort of taking over that parental
It's a role reversal.
Yes. It's really interesting because when I look at some of the comments on my own Facebook page, sometimes parents will, when they're defending their parenting style, they'll say, well, yes, you say all this, but I have a more open relationship with my child than I had with my own parents.
Yes.
Right? So then they want to do that counterpoint.
Yes.
Certainly even have friends and clients, and we all know somebody who does, where you look at their kid and you're like, wow, I think the kid might be more responsible and kind of more with what is going on, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so here's what I would say about that. I think that we, within this new parenting style, like helicopter's not new, but lawnmower, whatever you want to call it, the modern day dominant parenting style says that, a child should have a lot of input into what's going on, what's for dinner, what activity they want to do, what school they want to go to, whatever it is. We're giving a lot of power to our kids at younger and younger ages, which obviously takes our own away, which also takes our authority and our own positions away. So,
and their skills are so underdeveloped that they don't know how to handle that power.
That's a lot of responsibility onto them. So I think we're in an age where, interestingly, the self-help industry is $1 billion industry. People want to get better and they want to be happier and they want to be the best parents they can be. But somehow we're, I think, confused on how to do that, because we're striving for the best all the time. I have a whole chapter on that too. Like, I just want what's best for my child. Like, I don't remember when I was growing up hearing parents use that term like that. Like, I just want what's best for you, and I just want you to be at the best school with the best coach or the best team. I don't remember that being a goal.
No.
I just remember like basics being a goal. And so I think that's part of what's gotten us astray. There's a lot of confusion and mixed messages around what does it mean to be the quote best parenting. And I think that's equated to perfection.
I think a lot of parents also say, I want my kid to be happy, which is, I think, counterintuitive, because I really don't think that's what they want to do, because a kid at age 8 or 9 doesn't know what happy is really. Happy is in that present moment, in that immediate gratification moment.
I agree. When someone says that to me, because I think that's the most common answer there is, like when you ask parents, what do you want for your children? I just want them to be happy. That's the most number one answer. So when I hear people say that, then I break it down. I break down what happiness means. Well, okay, if your child was happy, what would be happening? And that's how we go, because otherwise, I think that is a very difficult goal to achieve as a child or an adult. You still have to break down, what does happiness look to every one of us, because it looks different for us.
I love it. Well, Dr. Sheryl Ziegler, this has been wonderful. Where can listeners find you?
So they can find out more about the book at mommyburnout.com, and they can find out more about me specifically at drsherylziegler.com, and that's ZIE, because people sometimes put in ZEI. you can find me.
I love it.
I'm online, writing away.
And you can see her on a lot of those networks that we talked about. And she's wonderful. You're wonderful. Thank you so much for being with us, Sheryl.
It's been great having you, and as a guest here on our relationship restaurant. And we're gonna have to get this book too, Poppy.
Yes.
We have to.
Well, I've just read the reviews, and everything is outstanding. You have to get it. Mommy Burnout.
Thank you so much. I so appreciate
We
it.
can't thank you enough, and we look forward to having you on hopefully sometime in the future, because we know there's many other topics we haven't touched on that we'd like to get to.
That's right. Anytime, just let me know.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Sheryl.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.